Search, we also discovered that Extortion 17 entered the battle zone that night completely unescorted, with no pre-assault fire, paving the way for that school bus, if you will, to make it slow military records. We were also told that the entire valley that night, before that entrance of that chopper, was in a heightened state of alert. So why were they unescorted? That's a question we still have no answers for. It was standard protocol, but it didn't happen. Why was there no pre-assault fire? We were told as families that because pre-assault fire damages our efforts to win the hearts and minds of our enemy. So in other words, the hearts and minds of our enemy are more valuable to this government than my son's blood. This is submission. And the cost of that submission on August 6th was my only son and these other people's children, as well as 26 others who aren't represented here today. Perhaps the most disturbing piece of evidence that Billy and I came across in our search for truth was uncovering the fact that the Afghan National Army, the Afghan National Police, and the Afghan Security Ministry have been, and still are involved in the planning of every single stage of every single special operation that takes place in that country. And yes, these plans include flight routes and landing zones. We are well aware that these agencies have been infiltrated. They actually brag about it. Yet our strategy does not change. In turn, we've been left with a lot of unanswered questions, and I'm just going to name 4 very quickly. Where did the intel come from that night that led us to believe Kari Tahir was actually in the Tangi River Valley? 2, the operation was spun up with such urgency that many mistakes were made. So I ask, what was the urgency of the operation that night? No one interviewed in the 1,250 pages of documentation we have can answer that question. Number 3, in keeping with that question, we want to know who the out-of-theater commander was that made the call to initiate a quick reactionary force when there was no clear and present danger. And number 4, perhaps most important, who made that call to switch out the 7 Afghani commandos at the last minute? And why was that information withheld from the investigative team? On a broader stroke, our sons and daughters are being asked to lay their lives on the line day in and day out under rules of engagement that predominantly favor their enemy's protection over their own. We were recently told by a special forces operator that under the current ROEs, if the enemy fires on you, then runs back behind a rock, when he pops his head up from behind the rock, you're not allowed to engage him unless you can verify that he has not laid his gun down. This is insanity. In other words, you must be fired on twice now, or your actions will be questioned by your government when you try to defend yourself or the lives of your teammates. Our men and women are dying by the droves under our current leaders, and for no good reason. They have become simple pawns in a violent political game. But go ahead, Mr. President. Send us all form letters when our sons pay their last full measure for your country. Play another round of golf. Laugh it up on the talk shows. And completely ignore and conceal the fact that 79% of the deaths in the now 11+ years of war in Afghanistan have happened under your command in 4 short years. Also ignore the fact that in the 8+ years under your predecessor, there were 2,724 soldiers wounded in action in Afghanistan, but in 3 short years, with you at the helm, Mr. President, 14,977 soldiers have come home maimed and forever changed. We have an ideology problem in this war, and it's high time we address it. Recently, an Army Ranger shared his heart with me regarding his much earlier than hoped for retirement from a job he had once loved and believed in. His words to me, quote, "I have a family who needs me, Karen. I had to get out. I didn't join to be sacrificed. I joined to fight." Several others have spoken almost identical words to us over the past 2 years. Many others weren't fortunate enough to make that decision before their final deployment. My son and the men of Extortion 17 spent every part of themselves. They gave up so much of the life the rest of us enjoy. They persevered through unimaginable odds to earn the right to step onto that helicopter on August 5th in the Tangi River Valley. The least their president and high-ranking military leaders could have done is offered them every opportunity to come home to their families